Hola, ¿qué tal? En Gira es lunes de webinar, un espacio para iniciar la semana con inspiración para que tú puedas lograr resultados extraordinarios en tu vida y trabajo. Yo soy Natalia Martí, tu anfitriona de hoy, y quiero iniciar como siempre dando la bienvenida a esta super comunidad de aprendizaje global que hoy nos visita de Washington, de Colorado, en Estados Unidos, también de Quito, en Ecuador. Tenemos gente de Mérida, en Yucatán, desde Querétaro. Bueno, pues tenemos gente de muchos lados. Pues muchas gracias por venir. Como siempre, es un placer tenerlos aquí con todos nosotros. Tenemos algunas notas técnicas arriba. Pueden ver un icono de Wi-Fi. Si lo ven en verde es que tienen buena conexión. Si lo ven en amarillo es que tienen conexión media y rojo es que no tienen tan buena conexión. Entonces, pues bueno, para que chequen ahí su modem y no tengan ningún problema al ver nuestro webinar. Arriba hay una bandera donde también ustedes pueden ver el idioma en el que se encuentra la sala, donde están viendo ustedes pues, este webinar. Abajo tenemos el chat donde pueden ustedes pues, escribir y pues en el engrane que hay también le pueden cambiar ustedes el tamaño si es que no lo ven tan bien. Y bueno, pues al final tendremos la sesión de preguntas y respuestas. Entonces, pues al final ustedes podrán accionar un botón en el que pueden hacer sus preguntas de viva voz si es que ustedes tienen micrófono, si no lo pueden hacer también en el chat. Les pido que guarden sus preguntas para el final. Yo soy Natalia Martí, soy directora de comunicación de Kidam Global y pues hoy tenemos como invitado a Stuart Heller. Él es fundador de Walking Your Talk y en esta ocasión nos hablará sobre la fuerza del agua, llevándonos a través de un viaje de palabras, imágenes, formas y movimientos sutiles para ayudar a cultivar la conciencia y las energías necesarias para convertirse en uno de los líderes de respuesta que el mundo necesita. Welcome, Stuart.
Thank you.
Great, it is great having you here.
It's a great pleasure to be
Okay, I leave you with your audience.
here. Thank you very much. Ah, Hello, everyone. It's a true pleasure to be here with you today. And welcome to a learning adventure with words, images, shapes, and subtle movements. The title, The Strength of Water, being the responsive leader the world needs, represents a vision shared by Kidon Global and Walking Your Talk. So let's begin with the image on the slide. This graphic is a poetic translation of a classical Chinese character, Ren. This idea has been translated in English as benevolence, reciprocity, or my favorite, human to human relatedness, or we are here together. And each of us is sustained by the same universal forces as represented by the atom-like image in the heart of each of us. Now, let's imagine these two people interacting. Oops, excuse me. For me, we're playing with the slides, seeing the best way to make it. Okay, there it is. Fritz Perls, the founder of Gestalt therapy, provides us with an intriguing idea. What if it is so that all contact takes place at the boundary? And what if the way you respond to people, situations, events, experiences influences everything? Now, how should we make sense of these moments amidst the complexities of our daily lives? The 5 rings of response is the map that we are using for our journey today. It has proven valuable in helping us make practical and humane sense of what is going on. Fire, water, wind, ground remind us of the primal ways we respond to and move through life. Space is represented by the person in the center, the curves that connect the 4 rings, and the black and formless background. The body outline reminds us that everything we do as a whole. The white circles in the feet remind us that we are physical beings. We move through space as we move through life. The white circles in the hands remind us that we are emotional beings. We experience and express ourselves as we move through. The white circle in the head reminds us that we are intellectual beings. We think, we interpret, and we decide as we move through life. The Tai Chi symbol in the center reminds us that that which moves the universe moves us. So let's begin with words. Here is a 5-rings map filled with different and related attitudes, moods, and qualities of presence. If we were to add a box for space, it would include the desires for being centered, balanced, and living in harmony. But today, we are concerned with the strengths and dangers of water. Looking at these words, which ones might you want more of? Which ones might you want less of? Rather than working with the words by themselves right now, let's look underneath them with what we could call the psychophysics of the water response. What we are calling water differs from fire in that the impulse to move comes from the outside. That is, fire can be viewed as the home of being self-motivated, and water the home of being other-directed, or as Monica Diaz names it, other-esteemed. Here is a very short introduction to the psychophysics of water. Phase 1. Are you prepared to be moved? You have the conversations, mood, posture, and muscular response patterns that will allow you to adapt simply and easily to the pressure of the encounter. If not, then your water strengths may have difficulty in showing themselves. Phase 2. Are you able to bend with the pressure? Can your muscles tighten and relax in response to the outside influence? Can your stories adapt? Can you absorb the pressures and tensions and strains without losing your inherent integrity? If not, then your water strengths may have difficulty in showing themselves. Phase 3, can you recognize when the pressure is released? Do you get caught up in your experience and memory and miss the simple fact that nothing is pressing upon you now? Can you center and relax enough to let this realization reverberate? If not, then your water strengths may have difficulty in showing themselves. And phase 4, are you able to unbend when the pressure leaves? Is your natural resilience strong enough to return you to where you were before the pressure? And now, can you return to yourself so that you can return to the world and meet it brand new? If not, then your water strengths may have difficulty showing themselves. And yes, we can spend lifetimes studying. So rather than having a discussion about this per se right now, let's begin doing some explorations of the strengths of water. We can add some muscles to it. Now, while we can do the simple practices we can do sitting, I will demonstrate and I will stand up to do them. So I will be standing up and then coming back to change the slides each time. So rings only exist in relationship to one another. Here is water compared with wind. I think, wind, I feel, water. So say I feel and rearrange your muscles and bones to fit the image on the screen. Here it is on the side. I feel. Now, move your feet closer together as you straighten your spine and let your hands rise to face each other by your head. I think. Feet wider, currents of life flowing down your back. I feel. The currents move up your back. I think. I think and I feel are related. In Chinese, the term for human consciousness, which is Xin, is a term that means both heart and mind together. So that I think and I feel are inseparable. But for the strength of water, we particularly need this sense of I feel. Good. Now we're going to shift slides. And now we're going to look at water as compared to ground. So say I'm flexible and let your spine give truth to these words by how you wiggle, wave, and salsa. So I am flexible. I am flexible. Now we switch to letting your heels and elbows turn outward and your hands and bellies tighten as you can say, I am firm. I am firm. Solid, solid, firm. Versus, and I find the switch to let me go back to, I am flexible. Flexible, or I can be firm. That the strength of water requires flexibility. You have the flexibility versus the firmness. Good, excellent. And next one, water is also compared to fire. So I can listen. I step back, I open my arms to receive what you are saying. Or I can step forward, lifting my arms and face as I open my mouth to speak. I speak, I listen. I speak, I listen. The strengths of water, to be a responsive leader, requires also that you listen. Of course, you need to speak, but are you doing it from listening? So I listen. This has also a feeling of more back and down versus more up and full. Excellent. Now, we're going to play back and forth with the three of these in relationship to each other. So, cultivate the strength of water necessary to be responsive. I obviously need to listen. Even more than I need to speak, I need to listen. And of course, to be responsive in itself is to listen, but to lead is to take that listening into speaking. I need the strengths of water to be responsive. I need to be flexible. To respond, to adapt means to bend and return. Am I flexible? But to be a leader, I need to also know when it's time to be solid and to not change and not adapt. But if I do it from the point of view of I can be flexible when I need to, therefore I can trust myself more when I am firm. Good. And to be a responsive leader definitely requires that I feel. That I feel. To be a leader, you must also think. But if that thinking is disconnected from feeling, something is missing in your ability to be responsive. So I feel. When I feel, it's as though life is flows down along my back. And there is a more inward tone than there is in my listening, my face turned inward. I feel this. What does it mean? I don't know. I just know this is how I feel without words. When we mix the words with our feelings, we begin to deal with our interpretations of how we feel. We begin to deal with our stories of how we feel. And often those are so strong that we act from those rather than how do I feel in and of itself? How do I feel? In that same way, listening is like feeling, but my eyes are towards you because you are the focus. And my arms are more open so I can receive. Right? I listen. Again, life is flowing more downward. Speaking takes me upward. Can I listen long enough and hold what you're saying before just coming back to say what I have to say? Can I listen? And from this listening, not necessarily listening, intellectually listening, but listening to what moves you. From here, if I bring that forward to speak as a leader, I can be speaking what you have difficulty saying. And is what my job is as a leader, to speak what is difficult for others. And also, to be responsive, I need flexibility. We sometimes say, a responsive leader dances through life versus taking a stand and holding it no matter what is consistent. So can I take risks to bend when necessary so I could become firm when necessary? But firmness built upon flexibility. Excellent. So what I'd like to do now, if possible, because I like to work interactively, is it possible to, even though we're going to do more questions later, is it possible to hear some of what you've discovered from this? And maybe I can show you a couple of other interesting ideas in this short and interesting little presentation. So please, anyone share what they discovered about the strengths of water for themselves? Or is that part set up for you to be able to speak? So please, can you share something with me about what you discovered so far? Is this coming through chat or is it coming through voice? Being responsive, I shall wait. Okay, we have some things that have come here already. Uh, am I saying that an effective leader needs some parts of all of the qualities? That actually brings us to this chart, that yes, to be the responsive leader the world needs does require all of it, in the sense that water does not exist without all of the others. So water makes no sense without wind. Feeling without thinking makes no sense. Being flexible without also being firm doesn't make any sense. To be listening without also being able to speak doesn't quite make sense. So in a sense, the water quality emphasizes certain dimensions. Hope that was a little helpful. And that sense, thank you, Margaret, in terms of the listening quality, the arms are open, generating a sense of openness, versus one could go, say, okay, I'm open to hearing what you have to say. I'm open. In a sense, open, when we include the nonverbal, is literally to open. And thank you, Tom, about connecting the words and the movements. What we found is movement by itself, the physical movement by itself, is not enough to develop the qualities we need. Words by themselves are not enough to develop the qualities we need. We need to integrate the words with imagery, because there's a term I am often used, which is the term the nonverbal. Often, I like the term nonverbal is because it stretches our understanding of what mind and body mean. Because nonverbal is also cognitive. So each of the little diagrams is actually a nonverbal cognitive phrase. So we need to combine the verbal cognitive with the nonverbal cognitive, together with shape, the shape of the words, the shape of our muscles, because shape also expresses feeling, together with subtle movement. We need all of them together to do everything. A very interesting question. Can you speak from listening? Well, yes, in the sense of I can think. And from what I think by myself, I can come to an idea, a decision. And from this, I can speak without question. The tone of speaking, in a sense, from wind, works very well when if I'm teaching a technical course at a university, or I'm teaching philosophy, the ideas are perfect. We express them. I could speak from my decisions. I decide, and this is what I'm going to say. Very commanding, not responsive. If I take in, so it's like resilience. I bend with my listening. And then as I process it, I straighten up and return, so all of me offers answer. So it can take, so what I have to speak now integrates my feelings with my words, with my decisions, with you and what you care about. Does that make any sense? Again, yes, listening in one sense is a whole person action. But actually, in many ways, each of these is meant to be a whole person action. It's like thinking is really a whole person activity. However, we've been trained to not use all of ourselves to think. So often our thinking is sometimes too cold or too limited. So the more of ourselves we bring to thinking, the more of ourselves, you know, this, the clearer and the more useful the answer perhaps is, particularly, especially when we're dealing with people versus things. So there's the question also, how does water relate to leadership? You could say that one of the problems we might see with leadership these days is that people are leading as though they're leading machines, as though they're leading things. The water quality reminds you first that you are a living human being, that you feel deeply, no matter what else is going on. By your ability to be with your own qualities of water, it's easier for you to find the capacity to care and to recognize other people's issues simply because you have it yourself. Now, it doesn't mean you have to show that you care. Again, in different countries and in different companies, what's required to show is different. So it's as though it's like you can put on your tough, particularly if you're working in the United States, you would need, in the boardroom, you need to put on your seriously ground outlook so everybody sees you as solid. But underneath that suit, underneath your power clothes, you still can be feeling. You don't necessarily have to show it, but do you have it? That's what makes things very interesting. I think there are a couple of other questions that might be in Spanish, and I apologize. I cannot read Spanish anywhere well enough to be able to make sense of that. So, is there anything particular you would like to go back to and explore of what we've covered so far? So I discovered this went quicker than I expected. We can spend more time with the movements again. I can spend more time exploring the psychophysics of water. And if this was the program on the strengths of ground, I would have a very definite presentation that I'd be taking you through and not asking you. But for water, I prefer to ask and to go with you rather than to just take you. So okay. I'm looking at some of the questions. Okay. There are two that I see that we can really work with. I want to look at, so someone asked if we can spend some more time with the movements, especially if you find that you overutilize one stance, of course. And then how to relate this to the questions of feeling versus achieving goals, which is a different quality. So let's play with that. And let's see. So let's pretend that you tend to be a thinker. Now, there are several kinds of thinkers. You could just think in yourself. You could think and consider. You could think and imagine. Different kinds of thinking. What they have in common is they are high center of gravity, beautiful places. However, when one wants to bring forth the ability to care, to show that you care, to more viscerally care, it's as though the center of gravity needs to drop. Now, if your habits are used to being here, what will tend to happen is your spine will not want to relax and bend. So it could be like, okay, I feel it. And the idea of bending your spine is something you probably do not think about. So one way to tell sometimes when, am I too caught up in my story about what I feel versus let me really feel what I feel. One way to find out is as you start going into here, just notice if your spine wants to bend. And if you realize it isn't, listen to the stories that are telling you why you're not supposed to bend your spine, or it's bent enough. The idea that, I think I mentioned when I was speaking about phase 2 of water, well, not having to worry about losing your integrity. So many of us, because of the way we think so much and decide so much, and we hold things so strongly, we hold our spine, we take the natural tension of our spine to be high. And the idea of bending seems like loss of integrity. When there's a difference between, in a sense, I bend it versus I collapse my spine. So this is, it's like I pass through the floor of my feeling to go down too low. I collapsed in my middle. So if your middle collapses, that's when you feel a loss of self-esteem, a loss of your own integrity. If this is strong, but you round yourself, you can maintain your integrity while at the same time create the space that allows feelings to move. Now, there was another question about achieving your goals and the relationship between them. So achieving your goals, that state is a particular kind of fire state more related to wind. To fire. A fire state related to wind, forgive me. So it would be like going from, so where I feel is like here, I go after my goals is like here. And if so people sometimes say holding on, being with your feelings can interfere with this. So that's in the sense of the more water is strong in me. And I'm holding that state, that shape. Then as I start to move forward, it's like when you attempt to move, if you're in a swimming pool, you ever been in a swimming pool, not over your head, enough that you can still walk on the ground. And if you move slowly, water is very accommodating, although you will tend to find a kind of a wavy motion. But if you try to move fast, the water seems to stop you. Now, because we normally do not consider that every state is also a state of physics, not just a state of experience. This resistance that's formed in the environment, we tend to go, oh, I guess I'm hesitating. So if I feel too much going for my goals, it's like I can go, am I sure? Am I holding myself back? So we sometimes would say, in terms of if you tend to be back here, how can you go for the goals? We could, if I use, instead of I feel, now I include the world, which brings me into I listen. From I listen, I can start going into I speak. And from I speak, the focus of my head can get clearer, and as though I can point, and then I can follow it. So this is an example of working our way through places where you seem to be. So let's say you tend to be, really again, in your feelings. And you kept always finding every time you try to go for your goals, things got in the way. It's as though you hesitated, like you weren't sure. So we can loosen that up by not trying to go so directly. That's often the problem. especially when trying to bring out water qualities. If you go too directly, it's like you scare the energies and they don't like to show themselves. So instead, you go simply from I feel, which is wrapped up in myself. I open my eyes and I acknowledge that I am also holding back, stepping back. But from here, I can bring forth a speaking. From the speaking, I could get clear enough that I could see where I want to go and now go. So I can walk my way through the different qualities to get where I need. Does that make any sense? Ah, thank you for the strong yes, Jorge. Someone also asked, how do you develop yourself? How do you develop the water stream? One way, I was just in a conversation with one of my colleagues in Russia. This water isn't a universal quality, a universal issue, and different cultures respond to them and use them differently. But one of the water is difficult to learn for a very simple and silly reason. It's because it's the most natural and basic of everything. If you just think of, we come from the sea, we come from the ocean. And you picture, the water plants that are moving, everything's moving in water. We are mostly water. Water flows through us. If we do not have elasticity in our lung tissue and in our hearts and in our veins and arteries, things do not work. Incredibly, incredibly basic. But somehow we have learned to inhibit the natural water in the same way, and it relates to how our relationship is to nature in general. So, in a sense, the way to develop the water qualities and the responsive qualities is to open up again to that you are part of nature and look at water, the movement that changes the adaptations of everything. That even in a simple sense, we are now, today is the first day of autumn. That's a change of season. With every change of season, life begins to move differently. In Chinese medicine, some Chinese doctors, what they do is when they read your pulses, they don't just read your pulses in reference to yourself, they read your pulses in relationship to the season. So let's say we're going into autumn and the doctor reads my pulses and he goes, your pulses are still in spring. You're not in harmony with this season. So one way to develop your qualities of water is to try to, how do I adapt to where I am in terms of the weather and the going on, or let's say I travel to another country. Can I, as I move through the streets, can I begin to adapt to the way the people are? Years ago, my wife and I were having this question on one of our many visits to Moscow, which was, do we stand out and look like Americans? And one day we came out of the train station and we were standing around and someone came over to us to ask us directions in Russian. And we discovered, we had been practicing over the years, learning how to, by picking up the cues from people, how did the Russians move through space? Every culture moves through space differently. So to develop your responsive qualities is also to watch the people around you. And it's as though try on their dances, the way they dance in life. That's an easy way. Here's a simple thing you just reminded me of, something very, very simple. When I was working on my doctorate, and I was working on developing I'm a mathematician by basic training, like Jorge. You know, a mathematics behind all of this. I particularly chose the movement of a pulse. So right now, with either one hand or two hands, take yourself, like do this. This is the pulse of your heartbeat. This is also could be viewed as the pulse of your lungs, and your breathing. Through your lungs, you inhale and they fill. You exhale and they close. Right. Inhale and exhale. Inhale and exhale. So one way to develop responsiveness is with an idea. The idea that breathing is not two movements. Exhale, inhale. It's actually one movement that has two phases. This is an excellent way to develop water, because one of the qualities of water is continuity. And a nice little way we can use this, once you develop the continuity in this movement of your hand, you can just simply try something very simple and imagine a situation that makes you happy. It just makes you happy. And let that memory and that feeling and those ideas spread through you, and let it influence the movement of your hand. And let the pulse show happy. Now, go back to a simple pulse that you're doing on purpose. And now, instead, think of a situation that makes you feel sad. Something that makes you feel sad. And as you think of sadness, let the sadness begin to spread throughout you, affecting every muscle, affecting every nerve, affecting everything. And let that sadness begin to show itself in the movement of your hands. Now let go of that and return to a simple movement. Inhale turns into exhale, turns into inhale. They are connected. Now, just for the sake of experiment, imagine a situation or a person that triggers anger. Start getting angry. And let that spread throughout you. And let that feeling and muscles change how your hand moves too. Now let go of that and return to the simple movement, the singular movement, the continuous movement. So this is another way to develop responsiveness, because on one hand, we could say this is breathing. Now let's hold your hand like here, open. Now tighten it and release it. And tighten it and release it. And tighten it and release it. And this is the movement of your heart. So by the simple or one movement that has two sides, and exploring it in different ways and connecting it to your different feelings and ways of thinking, you can begin cultivating responsiveness in a way no one can tell you're doing it. Actually, you could put your hand under the table. And you do this to, in a sense, to recapture your rhythm, to recapture this natural flow of tightening and releasing, of bending and straightening, which is qualities of water. This is a simple way, just using your hand as a way to make breathing more handleable, if you pardon the pun. So that's an easy way to experiment. And this is a beginning, but this is something you can always take with you. The other part of water that you might be able to take with you is that when you want to cultivate your strength of water, so sitting where you're sitting right now, you could sit more towards the front of you could sit more forward in your chair, or you could sit more back in your chair. Sitting more back in your chair encourages the water strengths to show themselves. And you can multiply that by not only sitting a bit back. While I'm sitting back, I imagine like I'm in a shower and the shower is flowing down my back. Not my front, it's flowing down my back, my spine softening and melting. And if you want to increase that even more with your sitting here with your hands, turn your hands so your palms are face up. So sitting back with life flowing down your back with your palms open is a state that also encourages bodies of water to grow in and of themselves. So these are more of the meditations. But again, the key, even for water, water requires all. Because we use the fire of action, we use the ground of paying attention, we use the wind of thinking and having a big picture all at the same time of doing it. And space, we did it with all of ourselves. That's always involved in everything we do. So even if the least you do is remember that, oh, I have legs and feet. I move through life. I move through life and I move through space. I have arms and hands. As I move through life, I experience and I express myself. I have a spine and a head. And as I move through life, I think, I interpret, and I decide. And I breathe. And as I move through life, I balance intention, breathing on purpose, with spontaneity, letting my breath just happen. So I would like to thank you for letting me share something of more.
Okay, perfect. So now we're going to the question and answer part. So if you have, si tienen alguna pregunta para Stuart, por favor, ese es el momento de hacerla. Si tienen micrófono también pueden hacerlo con su micrófono.
There is a question from Luis. Hello, Luis. This is a question about phase 3 of the psychophysics of water. How to identify the exact moment of tension to change? The answer is a two-part answer. One is practice. And the other one is remembering that these moments occur. So all too often, life is changing around us, but internally we forget that. So we're not paying any attention. So we go out of sync. Now, this is difficult to do. This takes practice. What I find is you go and you do what you do. But when you begin to notice that somehow I'm getting somewhat out of sync with what's going on, that's when I go, wait, let me go back and let me check. Is anything changed in the environment around me? If yes, then go, oh, am I still sitting the same way? Is my center of gravity the same as it was before? I'm not sure. Okay, easy way to find out. Let me first recenter myself in that sense of what we were talking about, remembering my legs and my feet, my arms and my hands, my spine and my head and my breath. I go, okay, let me be open to changes. That's a step-by-step way to begin looking at that. I hope that helps, Luis. Ah, so there is a question from Margaret, and is this the Margaret McIntyre that I met many years ago? I wonder. Hello. So Margaret asked again about the practice for water prior to mentioning how it sits in the chair. If that was this one, I think you may need to watch the video. But the essence of it is one of the most basic and primary movements of life is a pulse. And a pulse is one movement that we could say has two aspects. So this is the cognitive way of remembering water again. When we lose touch with water, it shows up in our thinking that we see two things. And this is very easy to do, particularly living in the digital world we live in of zeros and ones. We, in the Western culture, going all the way back to the 17th century when Leibniz invented the binary numbers of 0 and 1, based on Aristotle's ideas that these two things are always separate. It made it difficult to remember this interconnectedness. So remembering that one side is always turns into the other, that tighten turns into release, that inhale turns into exhale, listening turns into speaking, feeling turns into thinking, turns into feeling. I become flexible so I can become firm again. So I can become flexible so I can become firm. Remembering that things occur together. It's easier to remember that we are here together if I remember the multitude of ways that the ordinary aspects of life come together, not separate. Because once we separate them, it can't be put back together again. There's an old nursery rhyme which relates to this. The nursery rhyme, I don't know if it's also in Spanish, one they call Humpty Dumpty. Humpty Dumpty was shaped like an egg, and he was sitting on a wall, and he fell down. And the idea that Humpty Dumpty, when he fell and broke into all these pieces, all the king's horses and all the king's men could not put him back together again. Once we forget this connectivity of water, everything we try to do to make it work, we still keep missing it. So when I don't have the strength of water, but I still care, I try to do good and I try to connect, but things don't seem to work the way I want it to. When you realize that it's not working well enough, that may be the time to go, let me go back to myself, fill out my skin with my breath and my awareness, remember the simple rhythm of life. And now let me return to the issue I'm involved with, the situation I'm involved with. And I think you'll find the water will begin speaking up more. I hope that this is of some value. And one last thing. Linda wrote a question that again it's cognitive. It sounds like her question sounds like it's something else. It sounds like it would be more useful for us to be more attentive to how we're holding our bodies and practicing moving our bodies in a flexible way. Actually, that concept is what makes water difficult. In the world of water, it's like the world in modern physics, wave and particle are inseparable. You look at life one way, you see particle. You look another way, you see wave. Mind and body are the same thing. You look one way, you see body. Another way, you see mind. And when people use the word body in this way, you're actually not referring to body. You're referring to more, I'm attentive to how you're using your muscles. I'm more attentive to my posture. I'm more attentive to my gesture. I'm more attentive to my balance. These are things you can notice. But when you say attentive to my body, holding my body, you've just divided yourself, like saying inhale is different than exhale, fundamentally. It's simpler to go, oh, I forgot to pay attention to the information coming from my muscle senses and my balance senses. I got so excited by what I see outside of me and so excited at what I think that I forget to listen. Those voices are always present and always influencing you. In other words, the strength of water is always here. It is just waiting for us to relax our arrogance of thinking we have to be in control and letting ourselves be moved by life again. Very simple. Mind, body, different ways of looking at the simple movements. I hope that helps, Lee.
Okay, so I guess we don't have any more questions. So I'm going to, everything's going to say, it's saying thanks, Stuart. So I thank you, Stuart, for accepting this invitation.
I thank you. It's a great honor and a great pleasure.
It was great having you here.
I can't wait until I'm actually there. Next month.
Actually, that I was going to say that Stuart va a venir a México a fines, bueno, como ya lo dijeron aquí en el chat hace rato, va a venir a México a finales de octubre. Él va a dar un taller sobre The Strength of Water, la fuerza del agua. Entonces, pues va a hablar sobre pues, lo que nos habló hoy. Va a ser una serie de talleres que todavía no tenemos bien la fecha, pero nosotros les vamos a hacer llegar un correo electrónico con todos los datos y pues él va a hablar sobre lo que habló y sobre los movimientos que nos permiten llegar a ser los líderes que el mundo necesita usando la fuerza del agua. Entonces, pues bueno, va a estar muy interesante y para la gente que quiera pues, meterse a los talleres, todos les vamos a hacer llegar la información oportunamente. So, Stuart, I was telling them about you coming here and giving this workshop with us, that we are very excited to have you here in Mexico.
Yes, and to make it even more exciting and more strength of water, I will be teaching it with my wife, Carol. And
great.
yes, bringing male and female energies together is very important to understanding water.
Okay, so we're looking forward to see you here.
Yes, see you next month.
Yeah, of course. Thanks a lot for this webinar.
Thank you. Great pleasure.
Okay. Bueno, pues aprovecho para invitarlos el próximo lunes 28 de septiembre. Tendremos el webinar El vendedor ideal para tu negocio de Fabián Reyes, quien es coach de ventas. Y pues bueno, ahí también en la página de webinars, que es nuestro nuevo sitio, se los voy a escribir aquí, es webinarskiram.com. Ahí ustedes pueden ingresar y pues bueno, inscribirse a este próximo webinar que va a estar muy interesante como todos los webinars que tenemos para todos ustedes. Muchas gracias por acompañarnos hoy. Nosotros somos Kiram Global, nuestra dirección es kiramglobal.com. Somos una empresa que estamos desde 1990, somos mexicanos y somos efectivamente globales, damos cursos en todo el mundo. Entonces, bueno, ahí pueden entrar y ver nuestras soluciones, pasando, bueno, desde el elemento humano, autoestima, aspiraciones, coaching, el sonido del líder. Tenemos muchas soluciones y muchos talleres muy interesantes que tenemos para todos ustedes. Y pues, bueno, no me queda de otra más que decirles que muchas gracias por asistir a este webinar. Esperamos que nos visiten en nuestro sitio. Nos pueden contactar en contact@kiramglobal.com y pues pueden ver la grabación ahí también en nuestro canal de YouTube. Pueden suscribirse a Facebook. Muchísimas gracias a Stuart por estar hoy con nosotros. Muchas gracias a esta enorme comunidad por acompañarnos siempre. Pues bueno, mi nombre es Natalia Martí. Muchísimas gracias por acompañarnos y los veo aquí el próximo lunes. Hasta la próxima.